What's up, guys? It's Mr. Washington here, and I'm going to show you all how to find the percent. So, start off with the problem. What percent is 56 of 200? So the first thing we want to do with any word problem, and this can help you with any problem you are dealing with, word problem wise, that you come in contact with. You start to break it apart. What do I know? What do I need to know? And how can I solve it? So the first thing we do is we try to figure out, what do we know? We know that we have 56 of 200. So we have 56 and we also have 200. Since we have this word of between 56 and 200, we know that 56 has to be part of 200, the total. Because of 200 allows me to understand that 200 is the total or all that I have. So after we figure out what we know, now we have to find what we need to know. Well, what we need to know is what percent represents 56 of 200. So after we find what we know and what we need to know, then we solve it. First step in solving it is setting up our proportion. And when setting up our proportion, we take what we know, set up the proportion to find what we need to know. And proportion is simply setting two fractions side by side equal to each other. Finding a proportional equal. So 56 we've already determined is part of 200. We know that our numerator is the part where our denominator is the whole. This is what we need to have one whole. So to have everything we need 200. To have part of that, we would need 56. So 56 will go in the part, which is our numerator, and I'm going to erase this to bring it down. $200 is the whole. What we need to know is the percent that represents 56 of 200. So here is where our percent would have went. And instead of doing a percent, we're going to put the variable x to represent the percent for which we are searching for. And every time we're talking about a percent is out of a total of 100. If you take a test and you get all the questions correct, you get 100%. So the total is always out of 100. So our percent is going to be out of 100. The part is 56, and we need to know the percent that 56 represents of 200. To have 100%, we need 200. So after we have set up our proportion, we're going to focus here on this particular setup. Whenever we see a fraction bar, we automatically know that that fraction bar is telling us the math function that we're going to perform is to divide. So this is another notation that can tell us that we're going to divide. So if I were to read this, this would say 56 divided by 200. Whenever we're setting up a division problem from a fraction, we know that the numerator, which is the top number, the part, always goes inside the house. So if I set up a division house, my numerator, 56, is going to go inside my division house. And my denominator, which is what I'm dividing it by, is going to go outside the house. So I have 200 outside, 56 inside, and now I can divide. So when I'm looking at this, I say, wow, 200 is such a large number. Can I get 200 from 5? We're just going to take this piece by piece. Can I get 200 from 5? The answer is no. If I had $5, could I give you 200? No. If I had $56, could I give you 200? No. So what we have to do in this case, because our 200 is larger than 56, we have to add a decimal and a 0 inside the house. Now this does not change the value of 56, but what this does give us is an opportunity to divide 56 up 200 different ways. So that of course is going to give us a number less than 1. And so anything to the right of the decimal is going to be less than 1. Whenever we add a decimal inside the house, we have to let that decimal ride the elevator. I like to tell my students, we let that decimal ride the elevator, because 9 times out of 10, when you get on the elevator, it's only going to go up and down. It's not going to go across. It's not going to zigzag. 9 times out of 10, it's only going to go up and down. And so when I add that decimal inside the house, I know that I have to then add the decimal on top of the house, because it has to ride the elevator up. But it also has to follow my problem all the way down. And so we'll see that as we go. So now we have our decimal and our 0. And so once we've added it, now we can look at this as 560. Can I get 200 from 560? Well, I can say that initially when I looked at this as a kid, I would have thought, wow, those are big numbers, and it would have intimidated me. So what I like to do is little shortcuts, things that I can do to help me to break this apart into friendlier numbers. So I see that I have 2 zeros here. So if I take those 2 zeros off of 200, I'm looking at the number 2. Well, if I take 2 off outside the house, I have to take 2 off inside the house. So now I look at 2 and 5. What can I multiply by 2 that can give me close to 5 without going over? Well, multiples of 2 skip count by 2. So I can skip count by 2 and say 2, 4, 6. So I know that 6 is more than 5, but 4 is less than 5, but it's close enough to 5 without going over. So 2, 4. That tells me that I can get 2 times from 5. 2 times 2 equals 4. Well, if I add those 2 zeros back to 2, now I'm back at 200. 200 times 200 times 2 will give me 400. Because I added those 2 zeros back to 2, I have to add 2 zeros to my answer. So now I have, instead of 4, 2 times 2 equals 4, I now have 2 times 2 equals 400. So 2 times 2 equals 400. So I can get 400 from 560. 2 times 200 gives me 400. Now, notice I placed my 2 over the 0 in 560. That is because I'm not getting 200 from 5. I'm not getting it from 56, but I'm getting it from the entire number of 560. So that's going to go right above the 0 in 560. Then I subtract. 0, 6, 1. So now I have 160. And for the purposes of 6th grade, I tell my students that we work until our answer is at least to the hundredths place, or we have 0 remaining. So I'm looking at this. Can I get 200 from 160? The answer is no. I can't give you $200 if I only have 160. So what I do is I can add another 0. That still does not change the value of 56, yet it allows me to continue to divide till I get to the hundredths place. So I'm going to extend my house out just a bit so it goes over that 0. Then I'll bring this one down, and now I have 200 and 1600, 1600. How many times can I get 200 from 1600? Well, just like I did the first time, I'm going to take these 2 zeros off of 200 and look at just the number 2. And then, since I've taken the 2 zeros off of 200, I'm going to take the 2 zeros off of 1600 and just look at the number 16. What can I multiply by 2 to get me close to 16 as possible without going over? So I go back to my method, whatever method you like to use for multiplication. If you know your multiplication facts, you know that 2 times 8 can give you 16 exactly. So then I add those 2 zeros back, and I add the 2 zeros back to 16. Now I have 200 times 8 can give me 1600. So my 8 goes directly over this 0, and 1600 goes here. I subtract those numbers and I get 0. Now I have the decimal answer for 56 divided by 200. But my problem asked me to find the percent. So in order to find the percent, or convert a decimal to a percent, I need to multiply that percent by 100. Because I said percent is always out of 100, the total is always 100. So I can multiply it and go the opposite direction, move my decimal 2 place values to the right, making my number larger, to make this from 28 hundredths to 2 places, because I have 2 zeros in 100. We know anything times 1 is itself. But if I added 2 zeros to 1, then I have 100. So that means I'm making that number 2 place values larger. So now it becomes 28. This is now my percent. So the percent that represents 56 of 200 is 28%. And that's how you find the percent.